Welcome to the Real Estate 401k Show. Here are your hosts, Ryan Gertis, Mike Weinstein, and Justin Frederick, helping you build a legacy of wealth through real estate. Powered by the Recon Group at West USA and the Frederick team with Fairway Mortgage. NMLS number 625918.
Well, I couldn't be any more excited to have one of my dear friends in studio, Sharon Lechter. She is a 5-time New York Times Bestselling author. She's advised 2 U.S. presidents. She is the co-author of the international bestseller, which every single person is familiar with, has read it, and if you haven't read it, you're 100% doing it wrong, but it is called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And first of all, Sharon, I think the last time we did an interview, we were in San Diego, and we talked about hamburgers.
Yes, we did.
What's your favorite hamburger these days?
I love hamburgers, but I have to say I like my own because we do have a cattle ranch and we raise our own beef, grass-fed beef. So I think I prefer our own hamburgers.
What's your secret sauce to putting together the burger?
Well, if I told you, it wouldn't be a secret.
That is a fact. One of the things you do, before we get into the story of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, you have done a tremendous amount of work when it comes down to financial literacy. When I was a junior in college, and that was the first time that I went away to college, it was we called it Wow Week, the welcome week, and there was all the credit card companies there, and I can't remember what they gave me for free, but I walked away with a Citibank credit card. No clue how to manage credit cards, what credit even meant.
You thought it was free money.
I thought it was free money, and I thought when they were referencing a FICO score, I thought we were talking about a ficus tree. So that's how off I was. And then later on, I learned that every month when they called me, it wasn't just to say hi, because I was always behind on my payments, and I jacked up my credit, and you did a lot to ensure that that doesn't happen anymore.
Well, that was actually a trigger for me as well. My oldest son went off to ASU in 1992, and he had the same experience, the free pizza, free money, free T-shirt, free money. And we didn't even know he had a credit card. And he came home at Christmas and said, I'm $2,500 in debt. In addition, he had discovered he had a $2,500 savings account that he depleted. So he had a really good time his first semester in college.
I would have liked to have hung out with him then.
Yeah, oh my gosh. But, and we haven't always made the right parenting decisions, but we refused to bail him out, and he had to earn his way out of it. But that was December of 1992, and I'm as passionate about it today as I was then. I was pretty mad at him, but I was more mad at myself, and I dedicated the rest of my career to financial education, financial literacy, and entrepreneurship education.
And so my understanding is today, and I've got my oldest son in studio, he's going to be he's going to college next year. He won't see credit card companies on campus anymore.
That's right. I'm pretty proud of that. After having built the Rich Dad organization, I left in 2007, and that's when I got the call from President Bush. So I served on the first President's Advisory Council on Financial Literacy, huge honor. And I served both Bush and Obama, for those listening. Financial literacy is not a bipartisan issue. And during that time, we passed the Credit Card Act of 2009. I can't really take credit for the act, but I can take credit for being a very squeaky mom, a very squeaky wheel on the council. And so that law prohibits credit card companies from soliciting students on college campuses or within 1,000 feet of college activities. So
fantastic. Now, I've never personally met George W., but I know he's got a big cattle ranch, so who's going to make the best burger? If the Lechters and the Bushes are in a burger battle using their own cattle, who's going to win that battle?
I bet we will, because I'm still cooking. I doubt he does much cooking anymore.
All right, so let's. Everybody's familiar with Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It has been an integral part of so many of our investment experiences, and I would say more so, not so much of investment strategy, which it offers a lot when it comes down to real estate, but really truly understanding how money works and how real estate works. Take us through the story of how Rich Dad, Poor Dad became to be.
Well, absolutely. As I shared, 92 was when I got my passion for financial literacy, and I started working with school systems. My hair used to be red, but if you ever worked with schools, that's why it turned white. And it was an uphill battle, but I did start working with them to create some financial literacy curriculum. And then 1996, one day I got a call from my husband. Mike, as you well know, is an intellectual property attorney thought of internationally. And this guy, he said, Sharon, I met this guy that has what you've been looking for on the phone. I'm going, that sounds kind of kinky. What do you mean? I tell women, particularly when I'm in an audience of women, if your husband called you and said, I met a guy today that has what you've been looking for, what would you think, right? It's pretty weird.
Well, I tell my friends every once in a while, my wife sexts me, and she'll send me text messages of pictures of steak from the grocery store and ask me, do you want me to pick you one up? And I'm like, my wife is sexting me right now.
Yes, that's for sure. And then, so I met Robert Kiyosaki at the first beta test for his idea for the board game Cash Flow. It was still just drawn on a piece of paper with crayons. And I had just sold and just finished the first electronic talking book industry. We started that in 1987. The books that had the sound strips down the side, you were probably raised on them.
Yeah, that's pretty much the only kind I can read still to this day. That and pop-up books.
That's right. So I started that industry back in 87 when kids had no electronics. It's hard to believe. Dinosaur days. No screens. It was literally books, and these were talking books. And so we built that around the world and sold that. And that's when we moved here to Arizona. And so,
where'd you move from?
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin,
we were in Wisconsin at the time, yeah. So it was a great effort. I learned a lot about manufacturing, about international printing, distribution, shipping, and licensing, because we had this new technology, but people didn't know who we were. So we did little deals with little companies like Disney, Warner Brothers, Sesame Street, and that allowed us to explode the company around the world. And so I knew the resources, and I had the understanding to help make that game, the cash flow game, a reality. And so I volunteered just as a friend to help him do that. And in the process, he told me he was going to charge $200 for the game. I said, 1996, that's kind of pricey for a board game. Maybe you should write a brochure, and that brochure, and that was when he asked me to become his partner to help him write that brochure. And that brochure was Rich Dad, Poor Dad. All right. People don't understand that. They think this was a product in its own right. We wrote it to sell the board game. And the world told us, no, your brand is not cash flow. Your brand is Rich Dad. And we only never expected to write one book. And then people wanted more, so we said, okay, we'll do a trilogy. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Cash Flow Quadrant, Rich Dad's Guide to Investing. Oh, no, they wanted more. So we ended up in our 10-year working partnership. We wrote 15 books together, and then I had the other series, Rich Dad Advisors, multiple games, and we grew that brand internationally into over 110 countries, over 50 languages, and built the world's largest personal finance brand.
In 60 seconds, what is Rich Dad, Poor Dad about?
Rich Dad, Poor Dad is about the importance of buying, building, or creating income-producing assets. You are financially free when the income from your assets exceeds your monthly expenses, and it does not have to be millions of dollars.
How early should we start reading this book?
As soon as you can read.
All right, so our listeners, it's a wide range of listeners. We have people who are in their 20s and their 30s and their 40s, but we also have people, because our mission is to help people build a legacy of wealth in real estate, and that's what we do. But oftentimes, especially older parents or grandparents, that ship might have sailed. We're now talking about legacy plans, trusts, wills, and things like that. But as a mom and dad, what advice do I give them as far as starting to understand the principles? And I also know you have a book called Thrive Time for Teens. Walk us through that, the message, how important it is for me as a mom and dad. I know my son here, he just recently read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, so we now got to get him Thrive Time for Teens. And what's that about? And kind of walk us through that
Well,
message.
it's actually not a book; it's a game, and it's got a lot of humor in it. And so it really, Thrive Time for Teens was created for kids to understand that it's not just how they spend their money, but how they spend their time that determines their success. You know, if you're spending your money wisely and you're spending your time wisely, you're going to speed your way to success. If not, you're going to go towards failure. And so every decision you make, you're basically the CEO of your own life. Every decision you make will determine your future. And we talk about, within that, we talk about decisions like you go to a party at a friend's house, parents aren't home, cops come. Uh-oh, how many times does that happen? A lot. And so they understand they get a ticket and they have to pay it out of the money that they have. Other times they do something that's a positive for a neighbor. They get positive, positive move on the board. So it's really more of a character, behavior, and financial board game. It's not just about money. And it's won all kinds of awards. And I see the lights turn on. These kids that sit around and play it go, my parents need to play this game. And that's part of the problem. We have to break the cycle. Most of us were raised with an employee mentality, scarcity. We heard things like pinch your penny, save for a rainy day. We can't afford it. How many times have we heard it? How many times have we said it? And those are all negative. So we grow up as young people hearing money negative, money negative, money negative, and that's how we develop this scarcity mindset. And once you realize that, you have the opportunity to release it and realize where it came from, and then start realizing that we have an abundant world. And the issue is we have three things we can control, Mike: our thoughts, our words, our actions. That's for all of you watching and listening. Your thoughts, your words, your actions.
It's
So
my
if you
words.
start with-
My words is the challenging one for me, as you know.
It's even more critically important with your children. When Johnny and Mary want something, don't say we can't afford it, because that gets them upset. That's sad. Say, how can we afford it? And believe me, children get very creative coming up with ways to earn what they want. Allow them to make the money. Allow them to purchase what they want, because not only do they celebrate, the best gift is that you see their self-confidence raise right in front of you. And so your power of your words as an individual, but very important as a parent as well.
Well, you'd mentioned, as far as advice for kids of how they manage their time and in productive activities, productive thoughts, as opposed to just being a teenager. But some of us as adults, we don't outgrow that. And you work with tons of entrepreneurs from around the world as a mentor and as a coach. What are some of the traps that we fall into?
Well, part of it is when it comes to time, that's our only limited resource. You can make money, lose it, and make it back. When time's gone, it's gone. And so it's really important to understand, are you spending your time, which means it's wasteful, or are you investing your time building a better tomorrow? And only you can make that decision. Like during COVID, I get so frustrated when people were saying what they're sitting on the couch watching Netflix. What a great opportunity. None of us wanted to be left at home, but at least it was a time for us to reevaluate, retool, and re-engage on what we wanted in the future. That's investing your time, not spending your time watching Netflix. And so each of us, we can sit back and think about how we spend our life. Yes, sometimes you want to have fun. That's great. No problem with that. But make sure you're spending time investing your time for your future.
You've got some incredible grandkids. So take me into the living room at Mama Lechter's house, and you're with your grandkids, and you're having talks about either Rich Dad, Poor Dad. You're having talks about how money works, how real estate works. What do those conversations look like? And I would pay to be there.
Oh, my grandson is such an entrepreneur. When he was 6 and 7, he would come to my events and draw art in the back of the room, and of course people would just surround him and buy it, and he thought that was hot stuff. And he, even now as a junior in high school, he's got some salamanders that he's breeding, and they're very rare, and so he's making money from local pet stores. So he's always been thinking, how can I make money? Because the gift of a lifetime is financial education. And Once a child knows they can make money on their own, there's no stopping them. Unfortunately, we still train our kids to be employees. Go to school, get a good job, get good grades, so you can have a good career. And that is okay for a lot of people, but not for those people that are self-directed, eager to create opportunities. The most successful businesses solve problems or serve needs. We have a few problems today and a lot of needs. So it's a great opportunity. And during COVID, the highest percentage of new businesses were started.
So as far as getting back now in investing and in real estate, part of what we try to do on this podcast is help people see the end goal. I ask a lot of people, what does the end of the road look like? What does retirement look like? And oftentimes they'll reply with, well, I'm just going to work until I die. And that's not necessarily an option for me. And so we try as much as we can to remove emotion from the real estate process, from the transaction to the investing, because it just comes down to dollars and cents. And right now, and I know you work with a ton of real estate agents, I know you work with a ton of investors, and interest rates right now are scary. They're at the time that we've recorded this, they're around 8%. My parents, when they bought their first home, their interest rate was at 18%. And we had a party when they refinanced to 13%. And so, for me, with interest rates, you got to take a look at the history of it and historical averages and so forth. But as a savvy investor and a dollars and cents person, what is your message to people, or do interest rates scare you? And what is your message to them as far as, hey, I don't want to get in the game. I don't want to begin this process of building wealth because I can't pay 8% interest rate because 2 years ago they were 3.25%.
It's all in the numbers, Mike. 8% is not part, that's just part of the calculation. Even at 18%, there were good deals to be had. Right now, we are a compressed market. There's a huge gap. Sellers still think they should be able to sell at the high because their property got really high value. And buyers, can't afford those prices because of the interest rates. And so that gap is what we need to navigate. Sellers are going to need to understand if they want to move their house. But many sellers now realize if they sell their house with their 3% mortgage, they're going to have to find a new house with an 8% mortgage, and so many of them are deciding to stay put and hold on, which is, this month in Arizona, we had a huge increase in home starts, first time in 9 quarters, and that's because of the lack of supply and the high demand, low supply. Will it last? Who knows, because they have to pay those kind of interest rates on their construction money as well. But it's not the 8%, it's the calculation of what you want to buy, what it's going to cost you, the expenses, and are you creating positive cash flow? Positive cash flow is the number you want to find if it's an investment property.
And I always push back with them is if your interest rate is 3.25%, you don't want to do any kind of cash out refinance because you don't want to touch that interest rate. That interest rate is a gold mine. You still want to move, and you're going to probably move into something and get an 8% rate, and there's creative programs, 3-2-1 buy downs, 2-1 buy downs, and things like that. But if you got a 3.25% interest rate, let's hang on to that property. Let's turn it into an income producing property, because chances are with a 3.25% interest rate, that property is going to cash flow like crazy for you.
That's so true. It's very true, and I see that happening a lot. The flip side of that coin, Mike, I think is what's happening, and I think we're going to start seeing these foreclosures in the future. A lot of people who got into those 3.5% rates or 3% rates got ARMs, and those ARMs are coming due, and those adjustable rates are going to go from 3.5% to 8%. And many of those people are not going to be able to afford their adjusted rates, and they're going to be forced to, in essence, move into an apartment because they can't stay in the home they're in. And I think that we're going to see that in the next 6 months to a year happen more often.
All right. Well, in 2008, the economy crashed, and the Napoleon Hill Foundation reached out to you to re-energize the teachings of Napoleon Hill. And if you're listening to this podcast and you have no idea who Napoleon Hill is, you've been living underneath a rock, and you just need to Google it, and your whole world will be opened up to you. And so they asked you to write a couple books and adapt or readapt some of Napoleon Hill's books. But you wrote 3 Feet from Gold, Outwitting the Devil. But one of the most important ones was Think and Grow Rich for Women. And then since then, you've written a book specifically for women, How Money Works for Women. Take us kind of through that process, what those books are about, and the benefit for the readers.
Sure. Thanks, Mike. When I started my career, I was the only woman in the room. And so for many, many years, I resisted writing anything for women because I said the steps to success are the same for men and women. And then as I became more mature, I'll use the word mature, not old, I realized that there really is, while the steps to success are the same for men and women, we approach them very differently. And in doing that, in writing Think and Grow Rich, and if you are not familiar with Napoleon Hill, you know his work. He created the term mastermind. He created the term, the law of attraction actually originated with Napoleon Hill. He wrote, "There's nothing to fear but fear itself." And the term pay yourself first originated with Napoleon Hill. So you know his impact. And so I wanted to share his knowledge as it related to women, because when he wrote Think and Grow Rich, it was released in 1937. There were no women in business.
Right.
So it's a very male-centric book. And so what I did was I kept the same chapter outline, and I ended up looking at each of those steps to success through the eyes of successful women. I have over 300 women in the book. It was such a fun project. And so as you read through the book, and I have a lot of men who read it too because it's great, and it shows literally you may not relate to one woman, but the next one you can say, if she can do that, so can I. And it's just been so well received, and I just love it because it really does impact the fact there were 2 reasons I wrote it. One was the dialogue. We needed to change the dialogue. Women were complaining and criticizing about all the men that stood in their way, and some of them still do. But I said, if you are a true student of the law of attraction, what do you attract when you complain and criticize? Negativity. Let's change the dialogue from complaining and criticizing to let's celebrate the progress we've made. Is there more progress that needs to be made? Of course, but let's celebrate how far we've come, and let's celebrate the men that have helped us along the way. Because it's not women in place of men. It's when women and men are both at the table, you're going to get the best results. And so that was one of the primary reasons I wrote Think and Grow Rich for Women, is to change the dialogue from complaining and criticizing to one of celebration of women. And then the second reason was I was really tired of this work-life balance stuff. Everybody it was just a hot topic, everybody. I need more work-life balance. And I go, work-life balance BS, and that stands for before Sharon, because balance belongs in the yoga studio, all right? There is no work-life balance because we have more than just work and life. We have our financial life, we have our physical life, we have our spiritual life, we have our family, we have our friends, we have our faith and fun. So all of that comes together. So you have the last chapter in the book is called One Big Life, to try and give women a little relief. Stop worrying about one, work-life balance, because what happens is something happened yesterday. Maybe you didn't spend enough time with your kids. And so today you're screwing up today because you're spending time worrying about what you didn't do yesterday. And so let's stop and say, okay, that happened. I'm just going to make a different choice today. All of us, we are all where we are today because of the choices we made before today. If you want something different, something better in life, start making different choices. And so that was really the other reason is, stop worrying about work-life balance. Choose to have one big life and work together.
So, interesting question. Not sure. I always like to throw out questions I think that you've never heard, but I've never read Think and Grow Rich for Women. Never crossed my mind, but I'm married to a very powerful woman. This book helped me understand her.
Absolutely. Absolutely, yeah.
Because nothing else has worked. I've got no clue.
But somehow you've survived.
I have survived. Because I just say, yes, ma'am. Yes, dear. How Money Works for Women. Let's talk about that.
I'm so proud of this book. I released Think and Grow Rich for Women, I think, in 2014. Next year will be 10 years. But I've been involved, I do a lot of speaking, and one of the organizations I speak for is Wealthway, which is part of World Financial Group. And they reached out to me and they said, we really want to have you work with us because we want to use your reputation and your brand and combine it with ours. I'd never really done that before. But this book is really almost, it's like a guidebook. I've not seen any other book out there. We took the essence of what women face during their life. And we have women of every generation, every decade, from age 19 all the way through 86, and women from every decade of life and the things that they face from college, which of course would apply to men as well as women, but then starting a business, planning for a wedding, having a marriage where you have a special needs child and you have to deal with that, having a wedding, being married and being in an abusive relationship and having to leave that and get started again with children, having a wonderful marriage that after 25 years your husband wakes up and wants a divorce and you haven't done what you needed to establish your own credit. This is a huge issue, Mike, and most people don't think about it until it happens to them. And these women are in their 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and they have no credit. And everything was in their husband's name, and they are literally left so numb and unable to take care of themselves. And then one where not just the divorce, but some were, happily married, but the husband dies, and she has no clue, and she becomes the victim of elder abuse. There's so much financial abuse in each of those cases that we wanted to address it and give resources and support them both on an emotional level as well as a financial level. I'm very proud of this book.
How do we? And we're gonna put up websites and things like that. But how do we stay connected to you? How do we get involved in your ecosphere?
Oh, absolutely. I'm SharonLechter.com. I'm Sharon Lechter on Instagram. Author Sharon Lechter on my professional Facebook page.
Are you on the TikTok?
TikTok? No, I'm not on TikTok.
I'm on TikTok.
I'm on Twitter.
I've never done anything with it. I got people that do
Twitter,
that for me.
LinkedIn, everything else, just not TikTok. And then, it's important to me for people to be able to reach me. So my email is info@SharonLechter.com. We're there to support you. On my website, we have resources. I have a free gift called Your Personal Success Equation, which I talk about in the first book I did with Napoleon Hill Foundation, 3 Feet from Gold. And it's really combining your passion and your talent and helping you analyze that, because that's all about you. But then true success is combining it through the power of association. Like you and I have a wonderful association that I value, and it helps you establish you have people on your team that are strong where you are weak. On my association, I was able to expand the talking book because I did an association with Disney and Warner Brothers. With Rich Dad, I had an association with Time Life, Warner Books. And those are the things that help you exponentially grow your business. And then times A, taking action. How many times do we know what we're supposed to do? We just don't do it.
Yeah.
Right?
All the time.
And then end it with an F for faith. Faith in yourself, faith in what you're doing, faith that is needed and necessary, and faith that you will succeed. And most of us, that F for faith is really fear. And it keeps us from reaching the level of success we deserve. When I start working with somebody, I go through that formula. I talk about it with every interview, every speech I give, because it's usually the power of association they need help with and faith. And they go hand in hand. As a mentor, I'm an association for them, and I help them build their confidence. You have those people, you surround yourself with the right people. When you have a bad day, we all have them, they won't let you stay there.
Well, I've had over the years the privilege and honor to share stages with you, and anytime I'm at events, and it's a lesson for any speaker or anyone when you're at an event and there's somebody that you respect, is find the downtime, find those 5, 10, 15 minutes in the lobby or whatever the case is. You have, and your husband, have played such we don't tell you enough. But have played such an important role in our lives and the conversations and the challenges and the mentorship that you've provided for us is invaluable. So we're always in debt to you for that. But my last question, going back to putting your investor hat on, if you could go back in time to the young Sharon Lechter and Michael Lechter, and you're just thinking about real estate, investing in real estate, whatever the case is, looking back, what one piece of advice would you give yourself?
Well, I'll answer that question, but I will first answer it the way I normally do, because people often ask me, what would you say to your younger self? And I go, I teach people not to look back, but to look forward, to make different choices, all right? Not to revel in the past. But if I'm talking to young people,
Okay.
all right,
Fair enough.
rather than to a younger Sharon, because I wouldn't be who I am today if I hadn't made all the mistakes and all the right decisions along the way. And I don't really want to be anybody but me right now. So, it's like, be happy with yourself where you are now. If you want something different, start making different choices. But I'm talking to young people is really to understand that it's not what you do for your paycheck, it's what you do with your paycheck that determines your financial future. Every dollar you receive, you can let it go through your fingers, or you can invest it in an asset. Let the assets pay for your luxuries, because you'll always have the asset to work for you.
Well, then, if we're talking with younger people, would you consider education an asset?
Yes.
Okay. Because I would too. I take a look at my son who's...
Well, not all education. I mean, if somebody goes to college, they have no idea what they want to do in life, and so they just spend 2 years partying and having fun, and they know, at the end of their sophomore year, they have no more clue than they did when they started. That's not good education. That's just basically treading water. So education with a predetermined vision and goal is an excellent investment.
All right, Sharon Lechter, thank you very much. You can find Sharon Lechter at SharonLechter.com. As always, I greatly appreciate the friendship more than anything else, but I greatly appreciate your time. Thank you.
It is my honor. Thanks for having me, Mike.
Thank you for joining us on the Real Estate 401k Show. If you want more information on how to build wealth, click on the link or text us at 623-297-3266. That's 623-AZ-RECON.